of the fourth estate.
In a bid to resolve the backlog cases that have adversely affected delivery of justice in the country, the judiciary is now rooting for alternative justice system. According to the Steering Committee on the Implementation of the Alternative Justice System policy, over 90% of cases in the courts could be resolved through the system. Unlike the Alternative Dispute Resolution ADR mechanism, which has helped resolve tens of cases, alternative justice system is structured and recognized in the Constitution. According to Justice Joel Ngugi, who chairs the steering committee, 79% of Kenyans preferred resolving their cases through the alternative justice system instead of going to the courts.
So definitely, I talked about the fact that it's expeditious and quicker as one of the advantages. It is definitely faster because cases that are decided at the AJS, I mean, there are no adjournments, there are no mention dates. I mean, you go and your case is resolved, most likely the same day. I mean, it will be a rare day that a case that is in the AJS spills over to the second day. There are few that do so, maybe when they need to call someone who is not present on that day and so forth, but most of them are decided right there and then on the same day. So yeah, it's a very expeditious way of deciding cases, and once cases are referred there from the court system, then of course that case will be resolved.
He termed the system as faster, effective and cheaper, unlike the use of courts with cases taking over 3 years to be resolved.
It is cheaper, of course. You don't have filing fees, you don't have lawyers' fees and so forth. It is faster. You don't have your case parked in the court for years. It takes roughly about 3 years to 4 years to determine a case in Kenya, even in the magistrate's court. In the AJS system, that's a case that will be decided in a day or two, and so forth.
Lack of courts across the country had hindered quicker dispensation of justice. Ngugi, who is the Court of Appeal judge, added that currently there are 126 courts across the country against 290 sub-counties, thus denying justice to those in far-flung areas.
The aim of the judiciary is to build a court in each of the 290 sub-counties. We are not yet there. We have about courts in about 126 sub-counties. So you can count how long it will take for us to have one court in each sub-county. And you can imagine how long it takes to access one court in the center of the sub-county for most Kenyans. So alternative justice systems are a more physically accessible way of accessing justice for most Kenyans because they happen where they live. They happen in the village, they happen in their environs.
Ngugi was, however, quick to warn that all cases could be resolved through the alternative justice system, which was turning out to be popular at the community level.
Justice Needs Survey commissioned by the judiciary says that AJS is 79% popular. So only 21% of cases are actually resolved in courts and 79% are resolved elsewhere.
He identified the cases as those involving interpretation of the Constitution and matters to do with the children, like defilement and their custody.
It's one thing that we must say very, very clearly. Defilement cases cannot be heard in AJS. Okay? We need to make that very clear. And you need to make it very clear to your listeners and to everybody who reaches. Defilement cases are not appropriate for AJS. So the way I think communities need to understand is the Constitution now recognizes that their forms of dispute resolution, their forms of justice are valid, but gives them limitations and conditions. So one of the conditions is that you only have to do what is permitted. And so it's a trade-off. The Constitution and the law will accept your dispute resolution mechanisms, but you must abide by the Constitution. And abiding by the Constitution means that those cases that should not be heard in the AJS system should not be heard there. And defilement is categorically one of those cases that cannot and must not be heard in an AJS system.
The Steering Committee Vice Chair Steve Ouma called on Kenyans to support the system as it was enshrined in the Constitution and was effective.
And essentially what we do is to invite all Kenyans to support the route that they have chosen, which is a route of resolving their matters out of court. But the Constitution gives a bit of guidance that yes, do it where you want to do it how you've been doing it, but ensure that you adhere to certain principles of human rights, inclusivity, non-discrimination, and that the kind of justice that you provide in those sites are not inferior or poor justice. They are justice that meet the threshold of the entire idea of justice in the Constitution, that promotes human dignity, promotes progress, and indeed contributes to our transformation agenda.
The acting CEO in the National Legal Aid Service, Flora Bidali, was optimistic that the new system will help reduce the cases of backlog in the country's courts.
We also have a role to reduce the number of matters that are going to court when there is an alternative way of addressing these issues. AJS is a system that we feel is being used and it needs to be enhanced, and where necessary, apply AJS in the absence of having to go to court.